You're listening to School Solutions Talk, an exploration into the development of school culture and community through the integration of solution-focused practice. Here are your hosts, Tara Gretton and Vicky Esabag. Our sponsor, the Instructional Coaching Group, is the global destination for coaching and education, grounded in more than 25 years of research focused on improving teaching, strengthening leadership, and increasing student success. The Instructional Coaching Group partners with schools and systems worldwide to build sustainable coaching practices that support educators and improve outcomes for students. Learn more at instructionalcoaching.com.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi, Julie. We've got Julie Magadance as our guest with us today. Hi, Julie. How's it going?
Hi, y'all. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Julie.
Good. Really nice to have you on board today. I think the last time we saw each other, Julie, was at the SFBTA conference last November in Toronto. In fact, we were all there together, the three of us. Yeah. So it's really, really nice to have you back and to be able to connect again today and to hear your story, because I think, we had a few different conversations at the conference, but I didn't really hear your story, and I know that you're doing amazing work, and so that's what we're here to talk about today. I'd like to start with reading your bio, a very impactful bio with a great history in education, and the work that you've done as a teacher and counselor, and now as an assistant director. So I'm just going to read the bio out. Julie Magadance serves as the assistant director for counseling and guidance services for a large urban school district in San Antonio, Texas, where she supports 150 school counselors across 65 campuses, serving over 50,000 students. In addition to her district leadership, she maintains a small private counseling practice. Julie began teaching 25 years ago and later transitioned to school counseling. She has served as a school counselor and crisis intervention counselor at the elementary, middle, and high school levels across all pre-K to 12 grades. Her connection to the world of education extends into family life. Her husband is a high school principal, and together with their two college-age children, they prioritize traveling and have been lucky to visit and learn about schools in other countries along the way. A foodie of her own sort, Julie loves eating her way through her travels and spends her free time baking and cooking at home. I can really relate to that.
I was just about to say, even after my own heart. That's
oh yeah. I probably should have led with that. That's really where I would like to be spending my time, eating my way through other places.
Yeah. Oh, it really is wonderful to have you here, Julie. And I really, as Vicky said, we had the opportunity to meet in Toronto at the SFBTA conference, and I thoroughly enjoyed spending time with you and your husband and everybody else. But it was a really wonderful experience and wonderful conversations. So to be able to have another conversation with you and to have you on the podcast is a real privilege. So thank you for joining us. So to get us started, before we kind of talk more about your incredible work and the story about your work from past to present, I just wanted to kind of ask you, could you share a recent moment in a school that stayed with you, something that felt meaningful or unexpectedly hopeful?
Yeah. Well, as we were kind of checking in earlier, it's graduation season around here. And I have to say, this was one of those questions that was like, oh, this is a hard question. And it's so funny, I think, because, I wish that I was in schools more than I am now. And I think that's something, of its own topic to have conversation about. But I was able to be in school some now, especially at the end of this year, in a different way. And I think probably for you guys, it's the same. We don't get to be in school very often when we're not in our sort of educator role. But we got to during this last graduation season because our daughter graduated. And so it was the end of high school for us. And I remember sitting at her commencement, and there was just this theme, and it was a couple weeks ago now, where it was this acknowledgement that her class and that this group of graduating students has figured out how to be kind to one another. Kindness is just like, it is the description that everyone at the commencement used to talk about this group of graduates. Whether it was the student speakers, or it was the faculty speakers, or it was the school and district leadership, everybody just kind of kept coming back to this theme of kindness during this commencement. And it was so funny because, there were all these credentials that were there, students with all these honors and going to all these universities and all of this stuff. And yet the overwhelming theme was that this class was nice to each other.
Wow.
So that, I think, that's hopeful. That is, this understanding that school has a whole lot of purposes, but really the fundamental thing is helping and making sure that people are coming out to become part of the world that we're all in, to be with each other and for each other. And so I remember walking away that night thinking, they're going to be okay. Yeah. These kids know to be kind to each other, So yeah, that was my moment, Tara. I think something hopeful. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think, speak for Vicky and I, and that's just so important. I think I read a post earlier today. I haven't read it all yet, but that Linda Metcalf wrote that in all her years of of working in schools, she talks about, and I can't give it complete credit because I need to go back to it, but what she talked about, what's important is connection.
Yes.
And what you have described it really speaks to that, isn't it? When young people, when we are kind to each other, when we connect, we relate. And I love what you said, that you could walk away from that based on that experience and that being the dominant factor, that they will be okay.
Yeah.
And of course, the receiver of kindness is feeling that appreciation. So, knowing that when we give kindness to other people, that when students give kindness to each other, their peers are receiving that kindness. And so they're feeling appreciated. And we know that when we feel appreciated, we feel that we matter and belong. So how important is that in schools,
Right. Well, and, as I looked through any of the questions that you guys shared that we might talk about today, it's funny to me that every answer came back to that word, Tara, about connection. And I think that is, we can appreciate each other so much more when we are connected because those connections then they buoy the next connection, right? And so it's this network, this web of relying on each other, but in a good way. That's not relying on each other because that's all we have or something, but relying on each other because we know we can. And there's something really safe about that, and something really, I guess, hopeful, but also helpful about that, because shoot, we know we cannot do any of this by ourselves. And so if you have that connection, that web of security to lean on, boy, it makes any of those little steps a little bit easier, I think. And to figure that out as a student, that's super helpful for them too, right? Because I don't know that I knew that at 17 or 18.
Yeah. And I think too, as I'm hearing you talk, I have to applaud the person who was sharing that with the school community to say our graduating student class is just so kind. So the importance of that person in their authority to stand there and say that, and for their students to be hearing it and to know that they're making a difference, right?
Right.
How valuable is that?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, I think, the key there is that there was a choice to highlight that thing, among the things that were mentioned. It did. That's exactly right, Vicki. It added value to that characteristic in a way that not saying anything, it would have been just, it's still true that class was kind to each other, right? But it's more true, I don't know, or it just makes it highlights the value of kindness in a way that maybe we just haven't been lately, or maybe ever, I don't know. But bringing that value of kindness and of connectedness, right? Making that a more valuable part of all of the things that we do in the world, instead of it just being all the things that are tangibly able to be counted, right? Yeah,
yeah. And the thing is that when kindness and that connectedness is kind of is paramount and the emphasis is there, then actually the outcomes, all of the tangible things and, the education achievements are more achievable, because when people are connected and they feel cared for and they feel noticed and understood, then they're going to be able to achieve more, and I love what you described about there being a web. And I've just got this kind of vision of this web as these children, as these adults, younger, as they step out of the school environment, that web is just going to spread, because they're taking it with them. And to think it's contagion, it's contagious, isn't it? It's, and that will, to think that kindness can spread more outside of that school environment and just keep spreading, that makes me feel hopeful for the future, for the next generation.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thought, because I just think that this is so valuable, what you brought up here, Julie, and that is that, speaks to leadership, right? And the difference that a leadership makes when they value their students, and as you were saying, Tara, not just for academics, but for who they are as individuals, and some of their character traits, and the character traits that show compassion, and that. So again, I think that if our school leaders can be doing more of that, then we do have more resilient communities, and we do have students who want to be at school more, and who don't present with as many sort of grievances or disengagement or whatever it is, but that they want to be there because they know that they're being valued.
Yeah.
And what a nice thing to be the manager of, then, instead of all the things that could be hard. Instead, you're managing students who are glad to be there, who want to continue to explore new things, who want to learn new things, who, want to try something that's different or be curious about it, instead of managing the absenteeism or the late to class or the fighting,
exactly.
or, not that those things are going to go away altogether, but just what a different way of approaching work then, if you get to prioritize that.
Exactly. So I'm going to segue into another question, and this is about a little bit about your career. So you began your career as a teacher, and you've worked across every school level over the last 25 years. How has that journey shaped the way you see young people and their needs?
So I guess I should start off by saying it wasn't something I started out planning on. I wasn't thinking I was going to try to work pre-K through 12th grade, that I was going to experience the whole spectrum of, the American education system, and, pre-secondary or pre-college level stuff. But funny enough, I actually even did at one point spend a semester sort of as adjunct faculty at the university level. So maybe I need to expand my resume now that I'm thinking about it. But I started off as a high school English teacher and loved that work. That was really engaging and fun, being in the classroom with students. And it's so hard. Being a teacher is the hardest job there is. And then after doing that for many years or some years, then our kids were born. And so I ended up taking some time off to stay home with them. And then when I went back, I had finished my counseling degree. And so I went back as a high school counselor, but wasn't there very long because of the system that we work in. My husband was actually named the principal of the school where I had been serving as the counselor. And so he had to fire me because I couldn't work for him. Or as our daughter said at the time, well, Daddy can't tell you what to do. And so that was our big joke at home. Of course not. But so when I left working there at that high school, the only opening that the district could offer me was at an elementary school. I had never taught in an elementary school. Our counseling certificate or credential is for all levels. And so I was able to go do that, but I had never been in elementary school before. And so suddenly there I was with 4-year-olds. I had been working with 12th graders most recently. I went to working with 4-year-olds through 5th grade, which is about 11 years old. And it was just such a difference from the work I had been doing. And so refreshing and so interesting. Talk about experts in their fields, elementary school teachers, they know everything because they have to. They teach all the subjects and they are with the kids all day long. I was able to see and have this amazing respect for teachers at the elementary level. And then I really got to understand in practice all that theory that I had learned in my coursework about child development and about, acquisition of language and knowledge and all of that kind of stuff. I had no idea how any of that worked at the elementary level. And so getting to be with 4-year-olds and 7-year-olds and see what it was like for them, that was just amazing. I loved seeing how students grow and change at each of those different developmental levels. I feel really blessed to have seen it in action. I can talk now about what parallel play looks like because I watched kids do it, and learn how to interact with their friends. I was able to talk with students about making friends on purpose and things like that. And then I moved to middle school and spent some time there working in middle school as a counselor and was able to see that really interesting and challenging time. And they are that in America, that is, 12 to 14 or 15, really the really difficult, I would say most difficult time. And yet the needs of those students are the same as the elementary school students. They're just a little bit bigger, and so then again, I went back into high school and did some more high school counseling before coming to the central office level. But that question of what do I know now about student needs? I think as I was kind of thinking about that question, it dawned on me that the needs are really the same for 4-year-olds as they are for our 18-year-olds leaving school. They just have a bigger audience, I think. So our 4-year-olds, they need to know that they are, Tara, back to your word, connected. They need to have that connection with that caregiver who's dropping them off in the morning. Sometimes handing them off to me, really unsure that they want to stay with me, right? And figuring out ways to build that connection. So they need to know that they can trust the person they're being handed off to, that they can develop a connection with that person and with their friend who's next to them playing. And then as they get bigger and bigger, those connections just become a bigger audience. So then their needs are connecting with the friends sitting at their table with them, the friends in their classes with them, their people on the team. So it's, I guess sort of in my head, it's looking like a tree rings growing, as kids grow over those years, that the connections just have a wider audience. And then hopefully they have mentoring in terms of being able to see the models of how adults connect with each other in the different ages, because that adds another layer of audience, I think, too. Does that
Yes.
answer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful way to describe it. And I kind of wrote same but bigger needs, and then that wider audience. And I think that it's the same for all of us, isn't it? No matter how old we are, connection.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I just kind of thought what you were describing was at every level, and at that middle school as well, that 12 to 14, that at every sort of stage that you're seen. And, it kind of makes it really simple, doesn't it? Really,
It sure could, couldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I find myself, wondering if it is that simple, how do we ensure that it happens, to be seen and to feel connected at every level? And I don't know if it's just numbers that makes it hard, or if there's a lot of other.
Thanks to our sponsor, the Canadian Centre for Brief Coaching, the CCBC provides workplace training programs, coaching, and consulting to organizations across various sectors worldwide, all with solution-focused coaching as the fundamental educational framework. For more, visit pracademia.com. That's pracademia.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Work Collaborative, a not-for-profit movement that helps schools lead change from within. They trust that teachers, leaders, parents, and students have the capability to solve their own challenges when given the right support. Join this global movement of educators at workcollaborative.com.
When you were talking earlier, I was thinking about, when we were talking earlier about the kindness and the connections, I was like, actually, students, they like boundaries as well, don't they? And actually throughout, from being a baby, to that 4-year-old and all the way through school, often young people and children and young people who can articulate this, that will they love the respectful teachers, the ones that see them, the ones that are kind to them, the ones that listen, but they also like, when there's boundaries. And I think that's part of connection as well, isn't it? You spoke earlier about being safe as well, creating safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it also, I'm also thinking about mattering and belonging, right? That they all want to know that they matter and that they belong, no matter what, that there is that spirit of inclusion. Right. That we all come from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different family situations, cultures, and so on, and that it's all okay, and that we're being respected and, regarded with high esteem for who we are. And so I think that young people really want to know that that's part of that safety. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that, I guess that net or that web of connectedness, the safety comes from that same web, that same network, right? And Vicki, to your point, maybe it is that diversity and our differences that come and make that web stronger. When we weave in our experiences from various other people, suddenly that web has a wealth of experience based on strength that can be shared, and I don't know that we necessarily, get the same thing as the person who experienced it, right? But we can share those experiences as a way of just sort of opening up the possibility for others to know that something that has happened or something that I have either endured or something that I have experienced, when I share just a little bit of it with you, then you can have that same kind of strength that can come from it, or you can have at least a little glimmer of the strength that can come from it, even if you don't go through it yourself. I think I used to teach that with, in the English classes I would teach. The Greeks had that whole idea that if we watched a play happen on the stage, we wouldn't have to go through those things ourselves, but we could kind of learn the emotional toll of that experience, and having that same ability to build our network of connectedness to include the experiences of others, even if we haven't experienced them ourselves, we can have that empathy and understanding to kind of add that richness to our own experience, even if we haven't experienced it ourselves. So maybe that's another little benefit of the connectedness that we can get.
Yeah. And I sometimes, not to be sort of problem focused, but I think sometimes that gets lost when there's, particularly around children, where there's issues around behaviour. I think that can get a little bit, their stories, their experiences, if the emphasis is sort of more kind of managing behaviour and more punitive, that we can lose sight of their stories and makes it more difficult to have empathy. So I think, but how you're describing connection and that web and the importance of that connectedness, I don't know, it just makes it seem very doable and quite simple for people to be able to remember, the importance of having empathy for some of the things that for their stories, not to be lost in the school systems.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, because, as a counselor, you were working with students one-on-one, and I would imagine now in your capacity, your regional capacity, I would imagine you're working with a lot of counselors, one-on-one and in groups. How do you use solution focus to build that culture of empathy and understanding and connectivity?
Yeah. Mostly, it has been for me a way to do the thing that I have figured out is the most helpful, which is to try to really be present in each one of those moments and each one of those experiences or meetings as possible. I think when we're able to be present, then we do things like help people to figure out what it is that they most need from this time together. We do things like try to listen with curiosity instead of having the answer. We also look for exceptions. I think a lot of the time that we spend is very much problem focused. I think because that is when we are called, or when I am called. I'm called when there is a question about what to do or how to do it or that kind of thing. And so it is inherently sort of, I've got a problem, I need to call and figure out what to do. And we do consulting. And also the truth is that there are 100 million different times that they're not calling. And, so what are things that are happening in their world that they're figuring all this stuff out without needing to call or without there being a challenge there, I guess. And so a lot of exception finding and how they're managing to work together to solve things, like that kind of stuff. I think those are the practical, like, what am I doing every day that is solution focused? When I was working with students, it was very much an intentional switch in the way that I worked with students individually in my office. And it started, I think, as a way of trying to have a more kind of intentional approach to times when students came in. Working as a crisis counselor meant that my day was very much unscheduled, and so it was responding to things that happened in the moment that they happened. And so when students came in, trying really hard to be sure that I was in that moment intentionally trying to put aside anything else that might have been on my to-do list, because although there was a to-do list, it was really important to set aside anything and really try to be present in the moment with them. And taking a solution-focused approach to that meant that we could also do that really important thing, which was trying to get students back to the academic setting as quickly as we could, because that was the reason that they were at school, right? And so it was helpful for us to be able to I used the solution-focused approach for that purpose very much, was let's figure out what's happening now that is getting in the way of you being able to, be in algebra or whatever. And so then getting back to class, they went back feeling better. I felt better. And I wasn't taking this heaviness with me into either the next moment with a student or into the rest of my to-do list or that kind of thing. So yeah, solution focus has been a game changer for us. And I think it's the reason that I wanted to share it with the rest of the counselors that now I get to work with. And we've done that really intentionally, trying to bring solution focused training into the department and into our district. And we're continuing to do that. All the feedback that we've gotten really has been that it's been very helpful for folks. I still want to do more of it, but it's been very helpful so far.
Yeah, that's so wonderful to hear. When I was kind of looking at your bio and even looking at the question that we were going to ask you around that your work, that you support 150 school counsellors across 65 campuses. And I mean, to hear that you are sharing, obviously we're really biased because we love it, but we know right. that it works, and that you are sharing the solution focused approach with all of those people and that many schools is just incredible. And listening to you talk about how you turn up into conversations really intentionally, sort of really focusing on what people want and those exceptions on what's working, and that you come away from those interactions feeling more, better and hopeful, and that the child goes off feeling able to go back into the classroom and to think about the impact that you're having, across all of those schools is just incredible.
Yeah. I think we've been really lucky. We started off kind of small potatoes in terms of solution focus. We really went with just switching our crisis response stuff and giving counselors a different tool, a different way of approaching crisis response with students. And that made a really big difference. And so then it meant that we could start bringing it into other aspects of the counseling work. And the goal now is to figure out how to look at all the different parts of counseling work. I tend to be pretty biased toward the responsive services and sort of individual counseling side of what school counselors do. But the truth is, school counselors have a whole bunch of other stuff in terms of individual planning and making sure students graduate and have all the courses that they need and that kind of thing. And so now the goal kind of going forward is, how do we bring solution focused into each one of those aspects as well? So what does it look like to have a solution focused approach to picking courses? When you're sitting with a student to say, at the end of this year, if you've picked a schedule full of classes that is the right schedule for you, how will you know? What courses are the ones that you are most curious about giving a try? And just changing some of that language a little bit as counselors are thinking about the academic side of things, I think is going to be a really neat challenge. And then also the bringing it into teacher conferences. When a teacher comes into a counselor's office and says, I've got this student and I just don't know what to do, and helping counselors to be able to use solution-focused approaches in that conversation with teachers, so that they're not going down that rabbit hole of problem-focused talk, and really helping teachers to come to grips with what it is that would be the most bang for their buck, in this interaction with the student going forward. Again, I think it's self-preservation for the counselors, because they won't get dragged into so many things that are emotionally really heavy. But it means that they're going to be able to sort of be walking alongside teachers and students or whoever it is, rather than being the ones kind of leading the way. And I think that can be really it can be really a difficult place to be if you are the one who's supposed to know how to fix something. And I hope that for counselors that could be a change for them, is that they don't have to be the ones who necessarily know how to fix everything.
Yeah. I really like what you said about walking alongside. That's a very difficult thing to do for somebody, especially for the counselors who have a background in teaching, right? Because teachers are, usually very directed. It's about teaching, it's about guiding, it's about fixing, and lots of advice giving and that sort of thing. So, that's one of the lovely things about Solution Focus, is that it really helps individuals to move away from that advice giving stance and to learn how to walk alongside. And so that's so valuable for the counselors, and how amazing that you're providing them with these skills, and that you're sort of making your way, you're trying to infuse this throughout a very large region, school district. So I think that's really very valuable.
It is.
Yeah.
Exciting work.
Yeah.
So I think we have one final question for you, Julie. And so, which it feels like the conversation's gone far too quickly and could talk for hours with you. But so looking across your work and leadership in schools, what feels most important for you to protect or strengthen right now?
I wonder, I find myself wondering if there could be a way to really strengthen, and again, I kind of go back to Vicki's way of looking at it, a way to increase the value of, right? Increase the value of assuming best intentions from all those people that we are in this work of education with. Because that's not just employees in the schools, there's so many. I mean, really, education is society, I guess, is the truth. But if we could see value again, or place higher value in assuming best intentions from the student to student interaction, teacher to counselor interaction, family to school employee, interaction, I wonder if it would mean that we could spend less time feeling defensive or needing to, uphold a position or defend something, and more time on whatever it is that's actually the thing that we need to figure out. I wonder if that could be the thing that would be worth strengthening right now. And I think it's also kind of ironic that that's one of the things I wonder about, because it sort of already sets me up then against, as a, us and them kind of thing. So me against those who are not assuming best intentions. I'm kind of setting up a versus thing. But I wonder if I can get my head around that and not be trying to defend the need to be, not defensive or something, then maybe I can work my way around it. But I think the truth is we all just want young people to be able to figure out how to be in this world in happy and helpful ways to others, to be in community with each other. That's our hope for education, and the truth is that is why we're all doing this, whether it's parents who are sending their students to school each day, or it's, counselors who are meeting the students in the classrooms and in the counseling offices each day. We are all here to help and to make sure that kids successfully get themselves through the school day and get to the end of their schooling, 13 years later, as productive people ready to be part of our worlds, be part of our network that we talked about, right? Our web of stuff. And if we can just remind ourselves that we all have that same goal and assume that everybody is doing what they're doing because of that goal, then I think that could be a game changer.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Julie. And that kind of, as you're talking, what just started thinking about and was coming sort of full circle to the beginning of our conversation with what you shared.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I suppose my question to you was like, okay, so how? And then I was like, so what was the key ingredients? What is it about your daughter's year group? What is it about your daughter's school? What is it about, as Vicky, asked about the leaders, and you spoke about everybody that spoke at that graduation spoke to the kindness. That's what stood out. That's what you walked away with, and I wonder what that, if more schools looked like that, more schools experienced that across their communities, what difference that would do, that the defensiveness would lessen, be cured. What are the ingredients that we could share with people to enable a greater sort of span of kindness and connectedness, as you have spoken to, so beautifully.
Yeah.
Thank you for that full circle, Tara. That was
Absolutely.
so nice to hear that in the moment, that's essentially, that's where we began, and we're effectively still talking about that. So how it's so incredibly valuable and important, isn't it? And I'm just wondering, before we go, if we just take one moment, if there was just a few words that you would like to share with our listeners, Julie, just that they can walk away with today, what would they be?
Oh, few words. I guess to encourage myself and others to slow down. I think if I can remind myself of that and ask others to do that, hold me accountable a little bit to slow down, it could be helpful to be able to remember to assume best intentions, look for the kindness that is out there available to us, be able to feel the gratitude from others, and be able to recognize when connections are happening. If we slow down a little bit, and maybe that stuff is a little bit more likely to happen. But I need reminders too. So if I could ask that of everybody that I run into, remind me to slow down also. Take a moment.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because we all need that too.
We all need that.
When you slow down, you can notice more.
Slow down, you can notice more. Oh, that's it right there, Tara.
Oh, well, thank you for a beautiful conversation. It's been really lovely to spend the time with you.
And I'm just wondering, Julie, do you have, are there any links that I can put in your bio for this podcast episode that we can direct our listeners to? For example, the online group that you're doing for counselors for counselor support. If you could provide us with that link, that would be amazing. And any other link that you might have.
Sure, absolutely. I will share those things with you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to our listeners.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Great to see you.
Thanks to Family Based Solutions, a charitable organization that aims to end the cycle of abuse in families and to repair relationships using the solution-focused brief therapy method. They offer counseling services, support groups, solution-focused training, online support, and global leadership to those who need it most. Learn more at familybasedsolutions.org. School Solutions Talk is produced by Tara Gretton and Vicky Esabag. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and subscribe so that our podcast can reach even more listeners like you. Thanks for downloading.